Welcome to the quick session of Classmore. Today we are going to discuss about external commercial borrowings or the ECBs. You might have heard this term generally in the international business or the fundings or the fund raised by Indian companies globally. So let us start. Let me just share with you what are the contents of this session. We are going to start with the definition, the framework of ECB. Then what are the conditions and the limits provided by RBI for ECB? And what are the restrictions on the use of ECB? And finally, what are the reporting requirements of ECB? So let us start with the definition first and understand what is this term ECB is. So theoretically, external commercial borrowings, basically these are the commercial loans raised by two parties. One is the entity who is taking the loan, that is the eligible resident entity for India, and they're taking loan from recognized non-resident entity. And entire process should be in conformity with the rules that is defined by RBI. And these directions were given clearly in the kind of master directions by RBI in 2018-19. Generally speaking, these transactions are capital account transactions under FEMA. Now, what is the framework of ECB? ECB can be denominated or they can be taken in freely convertible foreign currencies or Indian rupees. So you can take the loan either in the foreign currency, which is freely convertible, or it could be in Indian rupee. And there could be other instruments as well, like debentures, notes, bonds, but those should not be fully or compulsorily convertible. Those can also be ECBs, and any trade credit beyond 3 years are also considered ECB between these parties. Now, what are the routes? There are two routes. One is the automatic route. Then in this case, you don't need an approval from RBI. The only investigation or the case that needs to be examined by the authorized dealer. And then there is another route, which is basically an approval from RBI is required. Now we move to the next part, which is what are the conditions and the limits for ECB. So first is basically the lender should be resident of a country which is complied with either FATF or ISCO global guidelines, and this is basically mandatory. And the second one is basically the maturity period. ECB with maturity period less than 3 years is not valid, so it should be having a minimum 3 years of maturity period, but there are certain exceptions. We'll be discussing that in coming slide. What is the eligibility criteria? All entities which are eligible to raise FDI are eligible to raise ECB as well. So it's very simple that all the entities who can raise the FDI can raise ECBs. But in case of ECB that is denominated in INR, there are other organizations like microfinance organizations. They're also eligible for ECB. And what is the total limit? The total limit is $750 million in a financial year, which is again a very big amount. And LLPs are not eligible for ECBs. In terms of the overall ceiling for the interest rates and other expenses is basically benchmark rate plus 450 basis points spread. If you move to the next, restriction on the end use. So there are certain restrictions on the end use of ECBs. First, you cannot invest into the real estate activities. Second, you cannot invest into the capital market or the equity market. Next, you cannot invest into the or you cannot use it for working capital purpose or general corporate purpose except with higher maturity period. And similarly, repayment of rupee loan except with a higher maturity period. And what is that higher maturity period? We'll discuss in this table. So there are few exceptions to the rule of 3 year. The first exception is basically less than 3 years. So if any ECB is raised by a manufacturing company with amount equal to or less than $50 million, then maturity period can be 1 year. And in case of any ECB raised by foreign equity holder for working capital or general purpose, corporate purpose, or repayment of rupee loan, then it is 5 years. Or in case if raised by for working capital purpose or general corporate purpose, then it is 10 years. And repayment of rupee loan availed domestically for capex, then it is 7 year, and if it is not for capex, then it is 10 years. So these are certain exceptions to the rule of 3 years. Now coming to the last section, which is about the procedures and the reporting requirement in ECBs. You first of all, you need to obtain an LRN, which is loan registration number. This is the first step in the process. And after that, you need to submit a form, which is called Form ECB. It needs to be submitted to the authorized dealer. And any subsequent changes you're making into that entire transaction, that you need to report that within 7 days of such changes to the relevant authority. And there is also monthly return that you need to submit. Once the transaction is done, then you need to share with authorized dealer the actual transactions in ECBs. If you're not submitting it on time or any delay that you're doing for either ECB or ECB2, then there are certain penalties that is levied, which is basically 7,500 and then plus a portion of the amount that needs to be paid, which is 0.025%. And there is an authority with the authorized dealer. They can approve any request for change in respect of ECB, except for FCCB or FCEB. Now, I think this is what we wanted to share with you in this session. So the idea was to give you overall snapshot about the ECBs. I hope you find this video useful and give you a summary about ECBs. Thank you so much.